Hello, and welcome to a short video about the 2017 Tucson Audubon Coronado National Forest Yellow-billed Cuckoo Habitat Assessment surveys. So for the last round of surveys, as we've done the last few years, we're going to be doing a habitat assessment. Now, how we're going to work this is I'll have points laid out for you guys where cuckoos were detected, because we're definitely going to want a habitat point, assessment point where we actually had birds. So I'll lay those out for you, but the other points that you do will be up to you when you're out in the field. So look at your map, try to space them out as much as you can, but rather than dictate where they're going to be, let's just sort of do it naturally. Like if you think maybe every fourth point count location, do one, or every fifth, depending on how long your route is, or maybe plan on doing one towards the end point, towards the beginning point, and then like two in the middle. But whatever seems like a good mix of points that gets an accurate, what you think would be a good assessment of what that habitat's like, I'm gonna leave that up to you guys. But except for places where there are cuckoos. Now, I'd like 4 points done on each route. If you do get a bird, like at the end, like a cuckoo, I am gonna have an extra data sheet in there to do another point if you do find a bird. So the ones I'm gonna have pre-set out for you are ones where birds were found, in case the bird's not there again. But we do want a habitat point for that point, and then the rest you can space for a goal of 4 points, and possibly a 5th if you do get a bird after you already did your 4. Alright, so I did email out the data sheet, but let's just go through each of these quickly so that way I think we'll have a better sense of what we're looking for. So it asks at the top point number, and that's just going to be like of the 4 you're doing right now, which one is it, the first, second, or third, or fourth. Survey area, it will be like whatever mountain range you're in, if it's Santa Rita's or Chiricahuas, whatever the site survey area is. And site name will be the name of your route. So let's, for example, say Florida Canyon. This could be the first point, point number 1, first point, survey area Santa Rita, site name Florida, and then the date. And then UTMs of this point that you're about to do. That's very important that those UTMs get on there. And then it asks a question, did you detect a yellow-billed cuckoo at this point today? So if it's one of those points I gave you because there was a bird, a cuckoo there, but you didn't get a cuckoo this time, just say no, because you didn't get one this time. And then, so there's sort of, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 5 major categories on this sheet, and it doesn't have to be horrible, so that's why we're going to go through these go through them one at a time so you can see exactly what we're looking for. So the first thing it asks is overstory and canopy assessment. So it's kind of, this sheet starts at the top of the habitat and goes down. So overstory canopy assessment, total percent of canopy cover, 100 meters in all directions from this point. Like all these questions that have to do with percentage, you really are just going to want to, you and your partner, or if you're by yourself, you're just going to want to go with your gut. Just go with your best guess. That's the only thing we can ask. So percent canopy cover, so 100 meters circle basically all the way around you. What percentage, if you were to look up, is covered by canopy? That's what we're looking for there. It can be half if you're in like a mesquite bosque where it's not very lush. It could be 20%. It can be 90% if you're in a really dense canopy. So just your assessment at this point of how much of the land within 100 meters around you is covered by canopy. Alright, and then we want to ask the top tree species. Then we want you to list. We gave you 6 spaces. You do not have to use all 6. If there's only 2 species around, that's fine. But we gave you up to 6 spaces. So total percent canopy cover. Oh no, sorry. The next one is top tree species, average height in meters, and estimated percentage within 100 meters of all direction. So let's say it's predominantly oak where you are. You could be like, okay, oak, average height is, let's say they're pretty tall, their average height is like, I always think of a meter as like, or like 2 meters as a person standing next to the tree. How many people stacked on top, how many 6-foot guys stacked on top of each other would be as tall as that tree? That's how I do it, but however you want to do it, your estimate of the average meter height. We're just trying to get a sense of how tall the trees are that you're seeing within 100 meters at this point. So how many meters tall, and then what percentage of the canopy is made up of those. So so within 100 meters, the top tree species, the average height of those, and what percentage they make up. So let's say it's like, feels like, just go with your gut. It feels like half oak, okay, 50% oak, then maybe 10% ash, 10% mesquite, 10% canyon hackberry. That's fine, and then do an average height. So just go with your gut. Your best guess is awesome for this. Alright, so the next thing here is mid-story assessment. So this is working in, this data sheet does explain too. Mid-story presence in quadrants within 100 meters. So mid-story, it even says here, mid-story is vegetation that is higher than a meter but shorter than 3. So approximately less than 9 to 10 feet tall. So these would be, a lot of them could be small trees, and then but taller than a meter, taller than 3 feet. So taller than grass and small shrubs. So first we ask you to just sort of check, and we even define here. So we want you to, from that point, kind of divide what you're looking at into 4 quadrants. We have ahead left, so I always kind of imagine it as like a quarter of a circle, circle cut into quarters. Ahead left is their mid-story, plants that are taller than a meter but shorter than 3 meters. Is it none, slight, moderate, or dense in this direction? Ahead left. And then ahead right, the other quadrant. Ahead right, is it none, slight, moderate, or dense? And the data sheet does define what we mean by that. None is 0%, which can happen. Like within a quadrant, there could be no mid-story. Slight 1 to 30%, moderate is 31 to 70, and dense is 71% to 100. So like completely filled, almost completely filled with mid-story. And we're just trying to get a sense, and then behind left and behind right. So again, just kind of go with your gut. And then the top 3 abundant mid-story species within 100 meters. You just list them. You don't have to do a percentage or anything. You just list the top 3 mid-story species. It could be things like manzanita. It can be mesquite, little shrubby mesquites, plants like that. And then understory assessment, we really tried to make this sort of more vague as it goes down, as we go down the vegetation structure. So understory asks total. So right, it defines it. Understory is vegetation shorter than a meter. Now we're doing this assessment within 50 meters, not 100. And it says it within 50 meters. So just because you can't see as far into the understory. So total percent understory cover in all directions within 50 meters at this point. So just go with your gut. If it feels real thick, you're like, oh, 90, 100%. If it feels real thin, like you're seeing some lots of bare ground, 40%, 30%, 20%, whatever. Just trying to get a general sense of how much understory there is, how many plants shorter than a meter. And then total understory, so of that understory, what percentage, sort of break it down by, these are loose categories of plants. So sod-like grasses are just grasses that are not growing in bunches. So grasses that are just sort of growing in a carpet way. Now they can be tall grasses. We don't necessarily mean like crabgrass or lawn grass, but grasses that are not growing in distinct bunches are going to be sod-like grasses. And then the next 2 are short bunch grasses and tall bunch grasses. So tall bunch grasses would be things like sacaton, or those large bunch grasses that are very obviously bunching near each other. And then agave and cactus, forb and summer wildflowers, and perennial woody stem plants. So I just usually go with sort of broad strokes on this. So if I'm like, okay, so I see a little bit of sod grasses, I see a lot of short bunch grass, be like, okay, 50% short bunch with some, I see some agave and cactus, maybe throw in 10% for that. I see some forbs and summer wildflowers, throw in 20% for that, like that. So I do it real blocky like that, and that's fine, that's great. That's sort of information we're looking for. And then the 3 most common understory species. And I even have here a note that if you do not know them, you can take a photo. That doesn't work. It does work okay. It doesn't work all that well, but if you really don't know and you're seeing a grass that's very abundant, or a shrub that's very abundant, and it's obviously a dominant plant and you just don't know what it is, go ahead and take a photo. That's fine, and we'll see what we can do with that. I am going to put together a cheat sheet as well as I can of some of the more common Sky Island plants, and I will have that for you guys to take in the field. But if you see some that go ahead and put those down if you are able to identify them, or just take a photo and then just say camera number and photo number if you can ID it, and we'll do our best to ID it. And then it asks, are there any non-native species of grass present? So if you know some of those non-native species, such as, the predominant ones we see in the Sky Islands are, potentially buffalo grass, layman's love grass. It's less of an issue, I think, in some of these Sky Islands. But if you do see any at this point, go ahead and put them. It's present, and it can be no. In a lot of our routes the past few years, it has been no. I didn't really see any non-natives, and that's great. That's fine. So then we get some general questions. So this is the one about canyon, cliffs, and walls. So are there canyon, cliffs, and walls at this point on the route? And you can say no, no sides, or you could say yes on one side, both sides of the drainage. Some of these routes are through canyons, some of them are through real shallow, sort of like canyons, but really shallow and wide. And that's what we're trying to get at. Is it a narrow, steep canyon, or is it a really wide, shallow, walled canyon? So approximate width of the greenbelt, again, just go with your gut. I know it's hard to see this from the ground, but if it feels like the trees, so it even says we're defining this as the width of the corridor of trees. So if this feels really wide, like wow, these sycamores and these oaks and these tall ash are going quite wide, just take your guess. You know, like, oh, this looks like at least 50 meters wide, or this looks like it's so narrow, this looks like 10 meters wide. Again, your gut is totally fine. Your best guess is great. And then approximate canyon width, we have it in categories for this. We don't expect you to come up with a number. It's categories. Less than 15 meters would be very narrow, like a pinched canyon. 15 to 50 meters, again, would be pretty narrow. 50 to 100, you know, it's pretty, getting a little wider. Is it 100 to 300 meters wide? More than 300 or more than 500 is one I'd add. Like if it's a very, very, very wide area, which would essentially be not a canyon, essentially, is what we're getting at there. And then if you do have canyon walls, so if you don't, you can leave it blank, but if you do have canyon walls, then it asks you, okay, on the right side, approximately how tall is the canyon wall and at what angle? And when we say angle, we mean you're in the canyon, this is the canyon walls. And if they're like this, and that kind of looks like, you know, 60 degrees on this side, in terms of, you know, on the angle, yeah, so this is 90 degrees, right? And so bending back, what is the angle of that, of the canyon wall? Does it seem like it's curving back a lot? And what degrees we're looking at here. So do your best, you know, 90, you know, 180 would be totally flat, and then 90, 45 degrees, you know, a little shallower, 60, 70, 80 degrees. That's kind of what, how I think of doing the canyon walls. If you are thinking of it the other way, which I know some people do, if you are thinking of it at what's the you know, the degrees this way, that's fine. Maybe draw it. Okay, maybe draw a little angle right there on there if you're not sure. However you decided to do it. So if you and your partner decide to do it on the more shallow end of the angle or on the more wider end of the angle, maybe just draw that on the sheets so we can know exactly what you were thinking. But so that's what we're getting at on the right and the left. Now sometimes you only have a canyon wall on one side, in which case just fill out that one side. If you have no canyon walls, then don't fill it out at all. It's fine. And then the last thing it asks is insect prey. Now I do have a note on here that you're only going to fill this out on your last sheet because we want your sense of how abundant the different insects are for the entire morning, for the entire route. So insect prey, and we list some prey here. We have cicadas, bagworms, also known as tent caterpillars, caterpillars in general, grasshoppers, lizards, frogs, bees, wasps, flies, butterflies, dragonflies, and then other. And if you do have an other, we have a place to list those others that you're referring to. So on the final one, it should be filled out. It says you're filled out only on the last veg point. And then ask for a temperature. So that's less important now that we've changed this to doing the whole route. But if you want to just maybe indicate maybe the average temperature for the day, or leave it blank, it's fine. But what we're really getting at, so we have, again, categories. We have none, slight, moderate, and dense. Okay, so we had cicadas. Let's say we detected cicadas during the morning, and they felt slight. We only heard a few. So, okay, that hit slight. Bagworms, we had just a few, so slight. Caterpillars, we saw a lot of caterpillars. Didn't feel like a ton, but we saw a lot, so then moderate. But let's say grasshoppers are everywhere. As you walk through the morning, they're hopping out of the grass. There's grasshoppers everywhere. You go ahead and put that as dense. And then lizards, we saw a few on the road, slight. Frogs, we didn't have any in our route, so none. So we're just looking for very general, broad categories of what sort of habitat you, or what sort of prey, potential prey items for the cuckoos that you detected. So then I have a notes thing at the bottom here. So anything that jumps out at you, like, I don't know, tons of fruiting hackberries right here, or whatever. Any sort of habitat, anything that might be important to habitat that jumps out at you, go ahead and make a note. I am leaving these all, I didn't double back them, they're blank on the back. So if you do come across something you want to make a note of, please go ahead and do that. But again, I'm going to have points laid out for you where we had cuckoos, and then the rest of the positioning of the points will be up to you. But try to space them out. Try not to just cluster them all in one area. Space them out along the route, and you know, just do the best you can with this, the percentages and everything on this data form. When we did this the last 2 years and we ran the data, we did actually find some pretty interesting correlations. So everyone last year and the year before, just doing the best they could and going with their best guess on this actually did work quite well. And we did get some good, really interesting data results for the Cuckoo report. So thank you so much, and good luck to all of us out there.